Magnetar Unlimited Prosperity Broadcast, bringing you the news of the galactic co-prosperity sphere. Citizens of the GCPS, stay tuned for a new episode of the MUP broadcast. Listen carefully, work responsibly, earn prosperity.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of MUP Warpath Lore. My name is Wiki Dave, and as always, I've got Claudio here. How are you doing, Claudio?
Hey, Wiki Dave, or just Dave. I'm feeling fine. I'm looking forward, again, as always, to this episode. It's been a while since we recorded the last one, so I can't wait to jump in.
Yeah, I can't remember either, but I always like it how whenever we're recording these MUP things, we act like we've just first spoken to each other, even though we've been talking for 5 minutes before we push record. I always find it funny on every single one that we do. Just so you know, we do talk before we start. Anyway, so let's jump into it. Obviously, we've got some news a bit of news that we want to cover. Warpath doesn't have a lot of news, so when something does come up, we do want to explore it. But first of all, what's the main topic for today there, Claudio?
The main topic for today is Exham IV, and to a small extent also Exham III. So another planetary lore episode, which will focus most of the time on the Veer-Myn, also on the Forgefather culture, a bit on GCPS and planet licensing, because that's our thing here.
No, it doesn't have to be our thing, Claudio. We don't have to make this our thing.
We made it once,
voluntary.
So it's sticking with us now. No, but it's really, again, an important starting point for this whole planetary planetary expedition we were doing here. So we will cover also other factions that are involved there, so no worries. But I think it's time for the Veer-Myn to shine, because until now they weren't really mentioned in our last episode, so it's perfect to go to Exham now.
No, I'm definitely looking forward to Veer-Myn. I think it's the one area that we haven't really explored at all, so it'll be really good to start sinking our teeth into some of these other factions that we've kind of been dancing around. But the first thing first is that we need to go into the news. So the CorpNet news this week is actually, or this episode I should say, is sponsored by Shin Sig Interplanetary, which is the best prefab habit. I don't know what you've written here. Best
prefab haptainers.
So
you know
the
cube terrain things that Mantic produce.
Oh yeah.
So the usual dead zone, and also for firefight the buildings. So there is the in-universe lore that those are from Shenzig Interplanetary. So that's the corporation who builds them. They drop them from orbit with all their stuff in there, like containers, and they are ready to go. So, and it's with a so fast-moving universe where you have to acquire new planets and time is money, we know that. It's the perfect way to build your new settlement with zero luxury, but enough place for a big workforce to go in there. So
it goes very fast. It reminds me very much of Outer Worlds. Outer Worlds has a very similar thing, how they just drop kind of the pre-made houses. Yeah. I like that. That's a really cool tidbit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's perfect. A perfect, reasonable explanation for the in-world cube system we use for simplicity on the tabletop. So there you go. Shenzig is our sponsor for this news section, and this news section will focus once again. I think we're pretty lucky this year, or maybe like every year since the vault dropped, that we got so much new stuff for Dead Zone, Firefight, or the Warpath universe in general.
Yes, so the Vault definitely, and also it got for on a side note, because we are going to be dancing into the Vault. It does now have a search feature, so you can actually search for STLs that you are looking for whatever faction that you're looking for as well, which will make what we're about to say a lot easier to find. But basically, there's new Marauder customization bits. So Claudio, you explain them a lot better than I do. So what are they?
So. We started seeing in March the Marauder bits you just mentioned. We once again perfect fit for our lore-focused podcast is that we got many flavorful items. So cigar hands with cigars and new leader hats and other hats and heavy weapons, so that you can make them your troops more distinct, which is always great. More flavorful, more options. I think it's one of the strengths of the Vault. And the other bigger part of the release is that we got new close combat weapons and other upgrades to get engineers. And alongside those upgrades, a Dead Zone and Firefight update was released, introducing the Commando Scrappers. So those are Marauders, engineers or scrappers who wield plasma cutters, have grenadiers, and have big, mean, energy-powered weapons to breach the, spaceships or bunkers, fortifications, and then scrap them down for bits.
Now, is that something that common that they do, or Mantic do for Dead Zone and Firefight? Just add in a random new unit without actually telling anyone?
They haven't done that before, really. It started now with the Marauders, but we're seeing a trend. Because we will come to that in a bit. In April, so we're recording in April, new bits were released for Matsudan. And the Matsudan got also customization bits for getting new variants of the heavy weapons and banners for the back, very Japanese, but also new weapons, new weapon options in form of shields for the Inashi and a new unit, the Deashi, so a Sekiwake with a shield. And they got profiles too. So apparently the Vault is now an option to get a few things here and there going on. We didn't get anything for the Forge Father and GCPS bits, but maybe that's something for the future. It's really interesting to keep things fresh with like those little updates here and there, and we will see if this will be a trend going forward.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think the hardest bit as well, because there's no formal announcement, it's a bit of luck of the draw that we spot these kind of things because there's not a lot of dialogue going on. I mean, we obviously got our eyes on some of the Facebook groups and on the Reddits, but sometimes if just like the search function for the Vault, sometimes they just add it. There's no fanfare. There's nothing. It's just a case of us being so nerdy that we're in there so often that we notice these changes. So it's if anyone out there does notice anything new, something they want us to cover, make sure you also join our Discord and just let us know because we do have a Warpath chat. And you're more than welcome to post anything you find and just talk about it, really, because some things won't be interesting enough to maybe bring up on a podcast, but we definitely have conversations all the time about stuff like this. So yeah, it's quite interesting to see these drops happening from time to time.
Definitely. And one thing I want to add is that in the Firefight Fanatics Facebook group, I think it's the head of the RC dropped a little bit of a fluff for the Scrapper troop for the squad option. And I mean, this is the perfect place to talk about that one. I will just read it out aloud, and we can,
talk about it.
Get our ideas in there. And I think it's a good idea to have this extra fluff together with new options and flavorful options. So I think it's a great way to make them more believable, maybe to include them in the wider lore of the faction. So, since the Mandrake Rebellion, Marauder armies have struggled to maintain a steady supply of resources to sustain their war efforts. Enter the Marauder Reclamation Engineers. Specialists in salvaging and repurposing abandoned war material, battlefield wreckage, and enemy infrastructure. Trained in rapid deconstruction and battlefield engineering, these operatives excel at dismantling enemy war machines and fortifications, often while they are still in use. Functioning as both sappers and combat engineers, they employ a brutal yet efficient arsenal. Cutting torches, breacher's axes, high-impact disassembly tools, and experimental explosives. Whether reclaiming the remnants of past battles or tearing apart an enemy position in real time, they ensure that nothing on the battlefield goes to waste, except their foes.
I like that. So that was just some fluff. Because when was that posted? Because I can't find that post.
That one was posted when the rules were released.
Okay.
It was posted under the release post in the Firefight Fanatics post, and it was written by the Firefight RC to have a bit of a background to the unit.
It's surprising that they dropped it, because I mean that is some good lore, and I'm worried about that getting lost to the wind. You know, when things like that drop. I mean, there's a couple of Mantic short stories that were released as newsletters, and no one archived it, so you couldn't actually find them. So I'm hoping to find that fluff and actually chuck it on the wiki as well. So I'm glad you've got it there. I probably will paste that on the wiki, just so we don't lose that, because it'll be disappointing that newcomers to the lore won't be able to find that kind of stuff unless they happen to come across that particular post, which is is quite unlikely. Not everyone's on Facebook, you could say.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a good thing it's out there, and I just guess that it will be included maybe in the next big update, or at least in a blog post that will be coming with an update or something like that. But I think it's a reasonable approach to really tie that in to the lore, and it makes sense. It's scrappers making sense for marauders who have to keep up their supply of things, and also they have to in bigger battles they have to have some tools to breach the enemy lines. So I think as shock troopers it makes perfectly sense to have these units. So they look cool,
and it's good to get new stuff as well.
Yeah, exactly. So you get new stuff, they look cool, they make sense fluff-wise, and you have some new toys to play with. I think it's awesome.
So although we'll put a link down below to I'll find the post and I'll put the link in the description of the podcast if you want to read it yourself. But yeah, check it out. All the stuff is on the companion as well of these new units, if you want to look into the stats and go through more of the gameplay side of things, which we don't go through over here. We're just purely talking about the lore. So if you do want to go into that, you can find it there.
And the last bit, a bit shorter than the Matsudan, than the Marauder one, is the Matsudan. I've already told you what new bits we get there. Mainly shields, but also the Osanchuo Predator, the big lizard thing, got a sci-fi, science fiction update, or upgrade, rather, with armor plates and looking really, really cool. I think it's a bit of a cyberpunk feel I get when looking at the unit, because before it was just a lizard and now it really looks spaced out.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. And so, Journey, go over to the vault if you want to see it, and it does look pretty badass, to be honest. It does look like just a large raptor, but savage, very, very savage, and the pose is really great as well. So I would recommend anyone to go check it out.
Exactly.
Cool.
Okay,
I think that's all the news that we have. Yeah. Not a lot, but we try.
I mean, it's still interesting. It's not a lot, tiny things here and there, but a new trend we're seeing now with these unit upgrades that are also getting rules and maybe a bit more of a fluff treatment in the future. Hopefully that trend will continue, because I really like it.
I think so. I think what's interesting as well, in terms of the game health, wise, as a whole, with Halo coming out, a lot of more people are kind of poking their noses into the Dead Zone side of things. So we're hoping to see a lot more more new people come to the hobby of Dead Zone, and also get a lot more support as well from Mantic. Get just new models, new everything. They do, and not to say they're not supporting it now, just more of a case of we're starting to see new faces come in. That, you know, the more people that buy the models, the more people that buy the product, the more product we get, and it's kind of like just it's a purely business. So I'm hoping this year and the next year we could see some of those Halo players coming over and start to see a really fresh new fan base come to the hobby.
Hey everybody, this is Mike Rossi, Wingasar's second best dwarf author, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe podcast.
Completely. And I think one big point is many people were drawn to the Halo game because of the IP, because of the background. Then saw the game is really, really good, and maybe people will give Dead Zone a chance. And here we are as a lore podcast. Maybe, hopefully, they will enjoy the lore behind the universe. Try out Firefight, Epic Warpath, and I mean, the lore is so important for a game to get stuck with the game, not because only playing a match and the rules are okay, but immersing yourself into the game you're playing and having fun and having those moments in your head where you can clearly see the charging Veer-Myn getting smitten by a Forge Father heat hammer. So with the fur burning this. Okay.
Yeah.
So well.
Well, I mean, how often do you get rats versus dwarfs in space? I mean, it's not exactly a very common kind of trope.
Yeah, interestingly enough, it's a fantasy trope, but not a science fiction trope. And here we are, having this as our main topic today.
Exactly, and Forge Fathers were there before squats. I know squats were back in like the 1980s. Squats technically existed, but they went away, and now they come back from in the Warhammer. But they had always been around in the world of Warpath. Since
the first Warpath edition, dwarves were the first faction.
Yeah, exactly. So we were there first, so we might as well just hang a hat on that and brag about it, because we've got all the lore to back it up. And speaking of that, we might as well. That's all the news that we got. And so yeah, we're hoping to get some more, but we'll dive right into the main topic of Exham. I was going to say Wrexham. Exham IV.
Exham IV. Usually, I've done a quote when we're starting with our main topic that is usually an in-universe quote. This time I've chosen something else. It's from the Infestation Dead Zone supplement, which introduced the Exham IV setting, which was then again fleshed out in Firefight later. We will come to that. But there is a really, really interesting part regarding canon and how Mantic treats that. It's from 2016, so not the newest. It's now 9 years old. But I think it's a really, really good quote or statement they made there, because we've spoken so much about the plague in the last episodes. This time, the plague won't be part of the topic, which is also why we chose to use Exham now. So I'll just read it out aloud, because I think it's a really, really good input from Mantic for things like official lore, canon lore, and your theater of the mind lore from your own ideas you have when you're building your force. So, officially, there have been no signs of a plague outbreak on Exham IV. Unofficially, however, Exham IV's warren of abandoned mining tunnels served by a network of grey market scrap metal shipping to Priory Station makes the perfect cover for a covered research base. Perhaps, in your campaign, the plague escaped its confinement during the chaos caused by the bleeding sickness epidemic, or one of the planet's many wildcat ore scavengers disturbed a plague artifact partially embedded in millennia-old bedrock. In short, you shouldn't feel constrained by the canon narrative. Mantic is in the business of making great games that inspire the imagination, and not in the business of telling gamers how they should or should not have fun. Whatever you and your friends agree to, in the spirit of respectful, collaborative wargaming, is just fine by us.
That doesn't sound like Warhammer at all. I mean, don't worry. But yeah, it's it's definitely like a bit of a mentality of no one can decide your fun. So you should definitely, make your own kind of like, don't you don't need to stick to certain rules that are clearly established. You can really just make up your own shit at the end of the day and just have fun.
I mean, we are here to really get the canon lore going, to tell you how it's done, what the background is, but feel free to fill the gaps. And I think we've already talked about it quite a bit, that those gaps are there to be filled, and it's good that we have them. And I really like this approach of, it's big enough, the planet is big enough. If you want to have this as a setting and you want to have maybe Plague in there, which didn't really appear, there's always an explanation. And I really like this approach.
Yeah,
also,
I mean, once in a while you do want to say what's canon and what's not, and kind of stick to rule. I mean, it just comes down to like, how serious you really take the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think we have already a few spoilers in there in this text, so let's dive into the story of Exham IV and what happened there.
All right.
And I've already told that at the beginning. Licensing. Really short here.
No.
But we heard from the Migan Corporation already, and they were also the sponsors of the last episode. But Migan was a young and power-hungry corporation back in the days of the Third Sphere expansion. So Exham IV is in the Third Sphere and was one of the first planets which were explored after going outwards from the Second Sphere. And it was found by a Sanmar long-range scout ship. They are known for scanning, and then the bidding began. What is really interesting is that Exham IV was the reason that Migan got into a powerful position, into one of the most powerful corporations we have in the GCPS, and also gaining a seat on the Council of Seven because of Exham IV. So we see how important Exham, besides everything we will go through, is already for the history of the GCPS and one of the biggest corporations there.
Yeah.
And we're talking about these licensing things, but it's interesting to know that it's not only like being in a room and bidding a bit of money to get like your mining licenses and so on, but there were bribes everywhere. So
there's always bribes in this world.
Yeah, sure, but it must have been massive because the planet itself was full of minerals, so it was incredibly dense. Because in the past, an exoplanet smashed into Exham IV's surface, and the mantle from Exham IV was then infused with a dense concentration of the precious ores of those two worlds, and having many asteroids also with these minerals. It's just an incredibly wealthy or mineral wealthy planet in the end. So the stakes were high. High bribes, persuasion teams, and even all-out warfare were used to get the mining licenses. So corporations waged open war against each other to get an edge for this licensing, which I find really intriguing because it shows how split up the GCPS is. Every corporation for themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't declare in the open that they are like waging war, but on outer distant planets, the destabilization processes against other corporations began. But in the end, Migan, a young corporation, got this license, and now they are one, if not the biggest corporation in the GCPS. So, what do you do when you have a mineral-rich planet, and you've got the license to mine it. What do you think?
Well, you mine it. You mine the hell out of it.
The hell out of it, yes. So, there are no questions asked, even for MIGAN standards of safety reasons or safety concerns for the workers and so on, or for the planet. Everything was shoved aside. The exploitation began. So big tunnelers were plunged into the planet's under the planet's surface to really mine through the whole thing. And in the end, the plan was to hollow out the whole planet. And you need big machinery for that, but also tens of thousands of workers. And those were supplied by MIGAN, brought there, and mining colonies were erected just above the mining shafts that were buried deep into the planet. So, as you can imagine, having like your colony just on top of the mining activities isn't like the best quality of life and health situation. So the air was stale and everything was atrocious for the workers living there. And Exham already had a rather red sand soil all over the planet, which was then made worse by winds and the going through the tunnels and going through those colony settlements. It wasn't really nice to live there. But still, those colonies got bigger and bigger because the exploitation got going on. They made money, they made riches, and they were more powerful every day. So the planet itself was already a dust ball, kind of, and all those mining activities didn't really help. But then the corporation thought, okay, there are still a few resources we could use besides those minerals we're just mining through from the whole of the planet, because there was water. And now we see how the GCPS or how the corporations work if they are left unchecked. Because they boiled the seas away, exposing more land, which could then be mined again, and the water was broken then down into its component elements and then sold on the resource market. So that's pretty crazy. They more or less destroyed the whole planet. Everything gone. The wind now blowing the oxidized red dust over every building, vehicle, person, whatever. So it's really a hellish landscape at that point. But it's of no concern for the MIGAN Corporation. If something is mined at that point, the tunnelers, the drilling heads are just moved elsewhere on the planet, and the mining continues.
So they just move from one spot to another.
Exactly. So in the end, it's just maybe nearly completely hollowed up, and it's still livable, but it's not nice to live there, and only the workers are living there, and then are left there if no need, if they are in no need anymore. So after that, maybe the story of Exham could have been over, but after that, MIGAN thought, we can still make even more profit. I've already mentioned that the planet was on one of the first to be now found and colonized in the third sphere, and the movement of exploring and settling on new worlds in the third sphere continued at that point. So they had built a big space station, the Priory Station, and that was refitted and even made bigger. docking ports, hub blocks, and so on were built in there. And it got to the point where it was then the biggest man-made object in the GCPS.
Oh.
So in the space or in the skies, so to say. It got the primary hub for everything going to or from the third sphere, and it's like common knowledge for everyone in the GCPS at that point. Priory Station is just known. So there was also the saying, "We're going to Priory," means we're in for a long journey, because that's like the farthest point or the jump point to go even farther than before.
So basically it was the hub for all the trade and was trade or just like transportation?
Both. So it's a massive trade hub, and also the transportation point where you like pause and then go into different directions, move your soldiers, move equipment, move trading goods, everything.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it's really one of the major hubs for that, for the whole of the GCPS going forward.
Okay.
And so this alone would also be enough to say, okay, we have this incredibly rich planet that was completely exploited. Then we have an even bigger advantage for Migan to get like the central hub for the expansion. But now something else happens. And catastrophe. Because Exham IV was knocked outward from its sun. So the orbit on which Exham IV was around the sun, the planet was knocked out of there. Rogue planet had an impact, and now things weren't going as planned or as before. They Migan tried to save Exham and tried to pull it again to on its orbit, but it didn't really work. So Exham slipped away farther and farther over the years. It's not like it's just a minor thing, but in the end, it would have been like an ice age for the planet, because it's just minimal changes could like completely destabilize the ecosystem. I mean, the good thing is there is no water anymore because it was all boiled away, so no ice age on Exham. But it's still a deep freeze, so it's still completely cold, but dusty and cold. So I was talking about a hellscape. It's now even worse. And
what's worse than a hellscape? I don't know.
I mean, it's nightmarish hellscape. I don't know.
Ultra hellscape.
Yeah. So from dusty and nearly unbreathable air to extremely cold temperatures, not going into the positive most of the time, while still being dusty and sandy. I think it's not really something where I would want to live, to be honest.
It's not pleasant. It's not pleasant.
No. So, as we can imagine, deaths were in the millions. At least, even in the official recordings. So, those left in the tunnels or in the decommissioned cities were just left alone. The number of people dying were so high that it wasn't really worth counting them. So, it's really a catastrophe. And whole centers were shut down, fuel stocks ran low. It's so the last things operating on the planet were like left to die. The problem is Migan had invested into this, and Priory Station was still in orbit around Exham, so they had to protect their investment. And they tried to pull out everything they could from the spaceports. And people weren't really happy. And on top of that, something else happened. People were reporting the sound of scurrying and strange noises could be heard everywhere. And then the so-called bleeding sickness struck. So the populace hiding and huddling in centers where the cold couldn't reach them as harshly as somewhere else, or even the red dust, they were all together trying to escape, and then some kind of sickness struck the human populace there. So Myghan has a problem. They need to get their equipment out. They need to somehow contain the problem. They were trying to get things off-world while people were dying left and right to the sickness, and were also trying to get off the planet. And they had like riot containment units on the ground at the spaceports trying to hold off the waves of refuge-seeking people who just wanted to get off there. All the while, they were trying to study the sickness on Priory Station to maybe get an edge and get the rebellion or the riots under control. The problem with the sickness is that it was extremely contagious, with a mortality rate of 80%.
Ooh.
Interestingly enough, only among the grown and healthy. So children shrugged off the virus, while others got into shock and drowned in their own blood as their lung tissue broke down. So not a nice way to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Delightful.
So it's really, really a dark turn there. Not only you have the freezing temperatures, the boiled away water, the dust winds, and like this I don't know, maybe post-apocalyptic landscape. Now you also have a sickness where people like cough up the blood until they die.
Own blood. So it's not a really good time. It's not a good time.
No, not at all. Not at all. If you're a worker down there, you're pretty screwed. So
let's be honest. If you're a worker anywhere in this universe, you're kind of screwed.
Yes. It's not really pleasant anyway. But this is, I think, just on another level still.
Yeah. Agreed.
So panic was spreading on the surface. On the Priory Station, the business went on still, but rumors could be heard. So Myghan wasn't able to really find a cure in time. So they had only one possible option left for them, and that was just to compartmentalize the data to avoid the panic spreading to the station and then to the whole of the GCPS. So, like a lockdown, and nobody gets to know what is happening down there.
Mm-hmm. A cover-up, basically.
A cover-up, exactly. They wanted to cover that up because they couldn't afford to lose the Priory Station to these riots, to this sickness on the surface, and they just tried to get out their equipment, and well, the human loss was accepted at that point. But the corporations also are always, at least a bit, under the control of the higher government, if you want to say so. So the Council of Seven got wind of what was happening there. And the communication was a bit full of panicked voices, and some subroutines of the enforcers were triggered by these communications, and an enforcer task force was then alerted to recon what was happening there, to see what's going on, if Myghan is doing something shady, and so on.
Come on, every corporation's doing something shady. Come on,
yes,
they're really suspicious at this point.
True, but if it's just like outside the normal boundaries of shadiness, I'd say.
If they're doing something extra shady, basically.
Extra shady, exactly. So they send out a recon unit, so a special pathfinder, the Enforcers sent out this Pathfinder, Unit P12612, and he got to Exham 2 cycles later after this was found out, and another 150,000 people had just died because of this bleeding sickness. And the planet was at that point virtually abandoned, and the spaceport was still there, but the planet itself was nearly dead. And those who weren't, still millions, were just trying to leave this planet and had no chance, because the Megan Marine Corps was just like shutting down every spaceport to not spread the disease, and they were just like shooting on civilians at that point.
So it's kind of like a containment protocol.
Yes, and a containment protocol, but not issued by the
But
Council
not really
of 7.
all right. So it's like a poor person's containment protocol.
Yeah. And there we see that these corporations always have their military, because otherwise they just can't exist. So there are some corporations who are known for their military, but every big corporation has an immense private army. And that private army was dispatched there because Priory Station was was the reason for them being as successful as they are. And as I said, they are on the Council of 7. They have a seat there, and losing Priory would be just devastating for them.
Yeah. Okay.
So overall, we could say with these Marines and riot troops holding down or gunning down the citizens, it was just like a matter of time until every settler on the planet was dead, because there was no plan B. It was just like keeping them from leaving the planet until the sickness was gone, and that would be if like every inhabitant was gone too.
Pleasant. So we still don't, like, the vermin have it. Were the vermin the cause of this, or there were just sightings and kind of hearings of the vermin, and they didn't actually cause the disease? Are they linked?
This is the interesting point, because until now there isn't really a vermin sighting until this Pathfinder, this recon unit 612. Who had already decades of successful missions behind her, she was able to infiltrate the industrial facilities, and she was looking for a reason, because the lethality and the foulness of their death was just a bit too abrupt to be natural.
Okay.
So she was going into the underground mining facilities, looking for the machinery and so on. And in the end, there were a few signs that something else was still living here. And so her suspicions that there were some footprints of clawed feet and a few bones here and there were like, she was gathering more and more, and in the end she knew there were vermin beneath Exham IV. So these shafts that were mined from the tunnelers from Megan, that were excavated and then left abandoned, were used by the Veer-Myn to house a nest. And somehow this sickness and the moment where like the catastrophe struck was enough for the Veer-Myn to take action. And apparently this disease was like their first wave of attack to get off the planet, because they knew they would freeze to death here.
Oh, so they did cause the disease. They're the ones that
that
infected everything. Ah, okay, all right.
Yes. So it's been documented by the ETCU that the Veer-Myn use sicknesses or like outbreaks, viral outbreaks, before they attack, before they strike, because they come out of the shadows, they strike at the defense forces or cause panic, and then in the wake of these events, they can emerge more safely. And 612 knew this, so she tried to gather more information. She ordered an immediate containment protocol, this time a proper one.
An official one,
So an official one through the Council of Seven, using other enforcers. But she knew that if this disease, or if the Veer-Myn would reach Priory Station, that would be the ultimate catastrophe, because they could spread to the core world in no time and to all the other settlements, because it was just this central jump point and central hub. So it was really a time-sensitive issue at that point. So she decided, okay, containment protocol is in place. A lockdown has to be made, but also the nest has to be stopped. So she knew that the Veer-Myn have a matriarchy. So the leader of a nest is a broodmother. She's the dominant female, and around her the whole brood, or even broods, are centered. She's the leader. She's the one, birthing new.
So they
Veer-Myn.
knew all of this. So Veer-Myn is a very common kind of like that. They know how they operate by this point.
Yes,
so
because
this isn't a surprise to them.
Yes, because right now I have to say that too. We are in the year 989, so the containment protocol is like maybe 10 years in the past, or even less. So it's a rather new event now. So in our timeline of things that are happening, it's around the same time as Nexus I. Veer-Myn were known, and Veer-Myn were still, for the large of this GCPS, something a bit of a like telltale, where you know they exist, or then others say no, it's just like a children's story, and so on.
So they weren't really believed, and probably so probably the first and second spheres probably didn't even think Veer-Myn existed.
Yes,
but
and
as you go
pirates. Yeah, pirates or like every spacefaring folk know the tales about Veer-Myn, and there are sometimes a few outbreaks here and there. But the ETCU, so the Counter Action Unit, they are the scientists were trying for years now to understand the society. It's still a bit unclear here and there, but the broodmother is like the driving force behind the nest. That was known at that point, for sure.
So they know enough about it to be able to counter them, basically.
Exactly, yes. So she also knew that she wouldn't stand a chance against the Veer-Myn, but the broodmother usually is shielded far below the surface, wouldn't leave the tunnels until it's really necessary. And she knew, so the Pathfinder knew she was alone, so she could sneak in there. And Pathfinders, Enforcer Pathfinders have tech rifles where they use tracer darts and get information when they shoot their target about life signs and so on. And they can also be used to tag targets for the other Enforcer forces.
Okay.
So she was able to infiltrate the nest. She tagged the broodmother, and so the remaining Enforcer forces who were on their way now knew where to strike.
So she was able. Wait. So she was able to sneak into a Veer-Myn nest and tag the broodmother and somehow not get caught.
Until then. She tagged the broodmother,
okay.
and the broodmother let out a big shriek, a wailing, and the complete nest went berserk in that moment. And this was... So 612 didn't have a chance at that point, and she knew that before. So that's how she operated. She knew she wouldn't come back from this. So the whole group the whole nest tried to find her, found her in the end, and in her last act, before she was torn to pieces, she released a drone cloud that recorded the discovery and returned to the vigilance control system. There is the nice sentence there, she ran out of ammunition before she ran out of targets. So
she died shooting.
That's the end. Yes, so she got caught, but shot her way through the nest, but still in the end was killed. But she was able to upload through this drone cloud all the relevant information. A grounding protocol was triggered, so the nav data to and from Priory Station was severed, and so all traffic stopped. All shuttles in transit between the surface and the station were under manual controls, so autopilots were shut down by that. So the MIGAN shuttles didn't know what happened. Many crashed, some even into the station because it was so abrupt. And I've already talked about the asteroids around Exham. So many were just killed by this sudden shutdown of autopilots. Chaos, even more chaos erupted after that. So the Veer-Myn took their chance at that point. They knew they were discovered. They knew now or never. So a horde of vermin erupted from beneath the surface. The marine battalions who were still guarding the spaceports, who had the situation rather under control because the civilians just were drawing back at that point because they had no chance against the corporate marines. The marines were completely unprepared. They thought they were just holding out until they could fly away. But the Veer-Myn came from beneath them, from underground. So many of the tunnelers were repurposed by the Veer-Myn, and they broke through the ground, releasing hordes of night crawlers or even the bigger nightmares, and they were just in their faces of the Marines, and before they knew what hit them, they were already torn to pieces. So, yeah, not that great for the Marines.
So the vermin do have a sense of intelligence with them, right? So they yeah.
Oh yes, of course. They are driven by the Blood Mother, so she is like the main reason they are doing things, and protecting her is like the biggest priority. But they are rather intelligent. They can think about good tactics and shock tactics, when to strike where. And it wasn't just like a chaotic burst out of the ground, but they were targeting specifically the launch facilities where they could just go into orbit. They wanted to take control. They didn't just go for the civilians or something like that. So it was a targeted strike by them. And interestingly enough, not only on the surface these outbreaks happened, but on Priory Station, hatches and air ducts burst open, and Veer-Myn smuggled beforehand into the ships going there, burst out of there and tried to take control of the station too. So over the last month, more and more Veer-Myn were already preparing to get off the world and infiltrate the station, and the MIGAN's guards on the station, who weren't thinking that they had to fight off anything, were just overwhelmed by this attack, by hundreds and hundreds of Veer-Myn coming out of the hatches. And on top of that, the visitors, those who were like resting on the station, were also caught by surprise completely.
Damn. So basically, so the Veer-Myn have this intelligence of being. They know how to get off planet. They know they can take over a ship, and they know how to operate a ship. But they act. Do they act like more of a hive? So Veer-Myn can't act independently, like one single Veer-Myn can't.
No. They act independently. There are different species or subspecies maybe in the Veer-Myn society, and some who are really intelligent. The progenitors are usually those who also are the mating partners, and those are really technically advanced. The Veer-Myn use a weird combination of tech. They use mostly maybe human scraps and make their own things. They use ray technology, they use toxins, but they are ingenious. So they are really, really intelligent at times. And then there are many of the normal night crawlers or stalkers who are maybe a bit more basic, so to say, but it's not a hive mentality. Yeah. So they act independently, and there are also characters who like have their own agendas and so on. But they are cunning, I would say.
Yeah, and they must have some form of intelligence, the fact of how they fly and so forth. So that's very interesting. So basically, so what happened in the end?
In the end,
they get off the planet?
We know that the enforcers were en route already, and a Drakon class vessel came just in time, and it carried with it a whole strike company of enforcers. They are trained for that, so they ignored the panic, the activity, the comms that were trying to get off the Priory Station. Everything was jammed already, and they just dispatched the dropship, loaded with a full troop complement to the Priory Station, and to get order on the planet's surface, and to confirm the possible threat, and to exterminate it. So to get to the Broodmother and kill her. So a surgical, fast, swift strike.
And
that's
they did it?
That's what the enforcers are trained for, that's what they are known for, and that's what they do best. So the dropship enters the asteroid ring from the outer orbit of Exham, and they are on their way to the ground. And the enforcer pilot obviously is perfectly trained and can easily navigate the asteroids, but something else had happened. The fuselage was shredded. Most of the troop complement was killed. The little rocks were just like puncturing the hull of the vessel, and only a few made it to the ground. And the enforcer's pilot training kicked in. He was able to crash land it, and a really decimated enforcer strike team was then crash landing on Exham's surface. They sent out a distress call to the Drakon, which was then directed to Corporation Central, and the containment protocol then was fully activated because of the loss of an enforcer ship, and the retaliation was then to come. So in that moment, Exham IV ceased to exist officially. Before, it was only the grounding protocol, and containment was to be was the plan if like everything was going like predicted by 612. But now it was clear that this is bigger than expected, and something has to be done. So Priory Station was cut out, Exham was cut out, and because of that, also the whole trade and travel to the third sphere and the other spheres was a bit in a chaotic state at that point, but it had to be done.
So was there like another hub that sprung up just to replace that, or they just...
Yes. There were more hubs now because back when the third sphere expansion happened and Priory was first set up, it was like the first big jump point, but now the GCPS is way larger, so there are more, but Priory was still one of the biggest and most important ones.
Okay.
But that was also a problem for the Council, because like eradicating a planet like Nexus Psi from the maps wasn't like a big deal. No one knows that planet, no one cares. But this one, they had to act swiftly, and they had to make sure that it would go as they have planned, also because they knew that the sickness would spread to the core otherwise. So really, really high stakes here.
The Mantic Universe podcast. So much universe, so little time.
In the end, the Enforcer strike teams, or then the incoming Enforcer Might was able to, or a group was able to respond quickly. They are known as the Thunderheads.
Thunderheads, yeah, right.
Yes, it's a really, really cool name. It's the 12th division of the Perseus Task Force, and they were sent there. They weren't far away, and they got there and locked everything down. And the Thunderheads were led by Captain Morrow, and he wanted to make sure that this will succeed. He tried to salvage the mission after the first failure of the first strike team that was like decimated on the ground, trying to survive there and not really being able to go for the Broodmother. And the problem is they didn't really have heavy support at that time, so no not a big fleet of interceptors or striders or peacekeepers, but they were headstrong and they just wanted to get it done. And they were led by, or not led by, accompanied by a forward observer named N7, who will later also play a role, and they were able to infiltrate the Veer-Myn ranks in the end and stop the biggest outbreak, or so they thought, at least.
At the time.
At the time, yes. So the Enforcers, under heavy losses, were able to contain everything. The Chaos 2 was contained by Enforcers on the Priory Station. They boarded the station, tried to bring it under control, were able to bring it under control until Migan forces were backing them up and, getting the station ready again. So, what is interesting about everything I've told now is that it's mainly Enforcers versus Veer-Myn at this point, or so it seems. But as you can guess, and we've already talked about the Forge Fathers at the beginning, who weren't active until now, other races and factions had interest for this in this planet. Of course, I will start with someone else, with the Reps, because as you can imagine, the planet was shut down. But it's an important planet. The people were suffering, so of course there were rebel cells already active on the planet's surface. And many workers were recruited by the Reps, because they were treated very, very badly by Migan. And so there was already an insurgency rising when panic took hold of the complete planet. And the mission of the Reps on the planet were to get as many people and information out of there, and to really show how the corporation works and that the system is completely rigged. And there was a leader there, a Rep leader, who I think is one of the most interesting Rep characters out there. And she is known for doing what must be done. And she doesn't care for losses. If she has to lose everyone and for a win, she will do that. And that's Adrienne Nikolovsky.
Oh, the Cypher, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's just awesome.
Her model looks cool as well.
Yes, yeah. She's completely nuts, and she's on Exham IV too. She's trying, even if people die because of the bleeding sickness getting out, it's worth it. So she's not really the good guy. If you're looking for the good guy reps, she isn't. She's really the absolute hardliner.
Yeah, she's a rebel in the sense of not really doing what's right, just what she believes is right, which is two different things.
Yes. And her plan was to infiltrate Priory Station. That was the plan before. Afterwards, still, after the Veer-Myn outbreak. And her plan was the destruction of Priory Station. So to send a message that the biggest hub, the biggest space station of the whole of the GCPS could be destroyed. And everyone should see like the burning wreckage. That was her plan. That was why she was recruiting men and women on the surface, pretending to liberate the planet, but her plan, and only she and a few others knew that, was to infiltrate Priory and, in the end, crash the whole system.
Okay. That's a good plan. I don't think it will work out for them, though.
Yeah. It didn't work out in the end. They got rather close, but at least she was able to escape and even get a few survivors out there. I mean, it was still a big loss for the GCPS, but it wasn't a big win for the reps to send a signal. But there will be other chances for her to draw blood and draw the attention of the GCPS.
The Rebs will come back, and I'm pretty sure she'll play a part in it.
Yes, I think so too. And there was also a hint. We did the interview with Christopher Verspeak. And there was a hint that he's a fan of her too. So let's see where this will lead.
Yeah, I mean, she's got a sister as well. I can't remember her name.
Yeah.
But she's got a sister that's in the Rebs.
Kira,
if
sorry.
She's still
Kira.
alive or not. Kira, I think it's Kira. I think she was in the
she's still alive. She is part of the Iris contract mercenaries, led under Erika Dolinsky. And she's also part of the rebellion from time to time, and she's in strong disagreement with her sister. Because her sister is the absolute terrorist. Yes.
It reminds me of Anna and Nina from Tekken for some reason.
Okay. I don't know them, so I really can't comment on that one. But others surely will. So.
Yeah, maybe just a little thing thrown out there for any Tekken fans out there.
So now the GCPS still, the reps still with this action are now on the radar of the council because it was clear for the enforcers and for the containment that something was happening there, and it wasn't just a civilian uprising. So that was also a problem, but in the end, Adrienne doesn't really give anything on that because she wanted to send a signal and she's going to. But there are other factions too, and I will go quickly over them too. So the Marauders. The Marauders were also present on Exham IV because they surely are like guns for hire. They are mercenaries. But here we have an interesting individual, one Orc Chief Maluka, and he was on Exham IV when the containment protocol came down. And he was there, again, for personal reasons, because he wanted to gather followers. And he really was in the vein of the Mandrake Rebellion, so the big, or Mandrake betrayal. He wanted to gather followers and not only be a mercenary or a pirate or something else. He really wanted to make a big orc empire, or like to carve out their own space. And he wanted his little empire there. And he had decided that Exham IV and the Priory Station would be the perfect place to begin. So again, Priory Station is really well known to everyone in the GCPS, even to its enemies in the GCPS space. So he wanted to have Priory Station and use it. And he knew that the GCPS military is vast. So many corporations, so many troopers, and so on. And he knew that he couldn't. So he couldn't defend the entire station if the GCPS and the enforcers decided to take it back. So he was again cunning. I used the word with the Veer-Myn, but marauders are really, really intelligent and cunning. So he had the plan to use the biggest weakness against them, their greed. So he knew how to tackle the GCPS, and he thought that Priory is too important to many, many corporations and to the whole system that to be lost. So he wanted to take control, threaten with the destruction, and then use it like for a price, so that the corporations could use the station, and he would like use or take taxes if you want to. And
profit over everything, basically.
Exactly. So he would profit from the greed because the corporation would say, okay, we don't want to destroy it. For our profit margin, it's better to pay him in the end. And so Priory, again, from another point of view, was the main target. Maluka smuggled his troops into the Priory Station. It took months of preparation, while Nikolovsky had months of preparation on Exham IV, parallel to Maluka, both not knowing that other factions had plans for Priory. So the ones wanted to destroy, and the Marauders wanted to keep it and make profit out of it, and then carve out their own empire around Priory. So everything was planned, and then the catastrophe hit, the sickness, the chaos erupted. So it didn't go as planned. And Maluka had to go to Exham themselves. They wanted to board the station again from there, and as deckhands. So they wanted, before everything happened, they wanted to go down there and just use the humans, thinking, yeah, okay, we have 10 Marauder deckhands going to the station every day. They are the same that come back, but every time it was another Marauder. So because humans were a bit racist, I'd say, they didn't really see the differences between the deckhands and thought it's always the same, while they are
every Marauder looks the same, basically.
More. Yes, every Marauder looks the same to them, and that was the angle that they tried. And everyone was ready, waiting for the signal, and then containment protocol hit. Comms were jammed, everything was in chaos, navigational data was switched off, and Veer-Myn were just bursting out of the airlocks. So not only were the Migan soldiers on Priory fighting the Veer-Myn, also the hidden Marauders who wanted to fight the Marines were struck by a Veer-Myn shock attack. So while no one knew, and Reps were also on there trying to destroy it at that point. So
was it Marauders, Rebs, Veer-Myn, and the Enforcers?
Yes, and the GCPS, the
and the
GCPS.
Yeah. So it was just a big mishmash of everyone.
Yes, you know the Umbrella Academy meme where the two are driving side by side and looking at each other?
Oh, yeah.
Or the Spider-Man pointing at each other. That must be the situation of Priory Station at that point, where okay, I'm alone here, and 5 factions are fighting each other in a big brawl. In the end, it's
which one do you take out?
Yeah, you have to take out everyone, and I think most of them wanted to take out the Veer-Myn, but you can't just keep the Reps alive there because yeah. Not up to times so good.
You have to. It just sounds like hell. Basically, everyone was just fighting everybody else on a planet that was pretty much like a shit planet to begin with. It wasn't a pleasant planet to be on.
Yes. It wasn't really valuable anymore, but the station around it still was. And
so infrastructure was worth it.
The infrastructure was worth it, yes, and it was just also a prestige object, and one that is so important for the main thing the GCPS stands for, and that is corporate greed and trade and money for that. So in the end, the Marauders didn't get their chance to take over the station because they hadn't planned with everything what was going on, and they too had to retreat. The chaos was big enough that they could make it off planet or off station in the end, because they weren't the only ones. There are still two other factions involved here, and one are the Assyrians. We haven't talked about them, but they also had an interest here because they have an AI that is focused on the humans. I think we've talked about that already when we talked about Nexus Psi and Adriana. So they were monitoring human communication. And the AI triggered, saw that something is off here, that the Megan comms, that also triggered the Council of Seven on the other hand, triggered also the Assyrians. And there was then also a short burst of imagery from Recon Unit 612. They got that transmission and they saw, okay, there is an uprising of Veer-Myn here. There is some disease, something is going on. Let's just see and observe what is happening there. The AI infiltrated Megan's communication network and they saw what was going on. And they said, okay, we have to get involved there. This is not good. This is not good for the balance. The sickness could overthrow everything because of like the human interactions and the hub and so on. So they sent a clade, a warrior clade Sikateu. I'm not sure how to pronounce that one. So, Clade, I think Sikateu. Sekauteu. So, Sikateu.
Sikateu, yeah.
I guess.
Sikateu, yeah.
So, the Clades knew that the Veer-Myn existed. They had a different name. It's not really known. But they know that they are everywhere. Not so in the Assyrian space, maybe. Because Assyrians have more of a sophisticated maybe scanning programs, but they knew that those were wandering through the galaxy on board of nearly every human ship and even of Forgefather ships. So, yeah, they watched the Veer-Myn and they knew they were getting bigger and bigger here and there. Sometimes they would intervene and cull the horde, a nest, and driving them off, but they knew this is too big. So, and this sickness that was created here was far more dangerous than other diseases the Veer-Myn created. So they knew it was so virulent, and it would evolve to be pan-species. So if it would be left unchecked, it could be a self-developing bioweapon, which then could rewrite its own genetic code to adapt to any potential host. So it starts with humans because it was written, or it was like concepted to kill the humans, but it would then go on to Sphere, to Grogans, Judwen, Dwarves, and also Asterians.
So it kind of reminds me of like that goo from Alien.
Yes. That's a good comparison. So, and that could, like, Assyrians knew, okay, that shouldn't never happen. This shouldn't be released. It's too catastrophic. It could cull the whole universe in the end. So they had to intervene, and some AIs mapped out how the bleeding sickness could reach across the stars, and like it was catastrophic. It would like infect every living body until system after system would be left dead and empty, and the galactic balance obviously devastated because of that.
Yeah.
So they had to get there, and Clade Sikateu wasn't the largest clade, and not even like the biggest fighters or with the biggest martial reputation, but they had a master overseer known as Shuthane, and he was known to do what must be done, even if it's really distasteful, but for balance above everything. So he was then summoned by the AI into action, and he followed the directives to the letter. And it was clear that the Veer-Myn, or that this sickness couldn't leave the system. Interestingly enough, usually the Assyrians fight with drones, so with the ciphers or with marionettes. Sometimes they send their overseers or some other beings directly onto the battlefield. And the others who then monitor how the battle is going are known as Shuvatar. And they had a veteran Shuvatar with them at that point named Nemrath. He was with the Clade, and he accompanied the war effort of the Assyrians on Exham IV. So he's there to monitor how it's going, how they perform, and to make sure that the ciphers and marionettes are in their best, are the best fighting force that can be there. So the humans had their containment protocols, but the Assyrians, they know the containment protocol is still only a half measure in their eyes.
Yeah.
So it's not as good as it could be, because they are just humans and they have their own interest and so on. So they have done something that they would be doing many, many other times, also on Tertia. They would be sending their warships that are concealed, so with stealth mechanics, and they would make a second containment ring in space around the Exham system. And they thought
within the containment.
Exactly, yes. Or around the containment then, yes. And so their idea was to cut out this cancer like a surgeon. Not like planetary bombardment, but take out everything that could spread the disease. And then, if that is done, and even if it hits civilians, or that doesn't matter in that case, and only then the galaxy could be left in balance and could heal from this catastrophe.
Damn.
So,
all right, so that's the Assyrians.
Yes, they are a bit more in the shadows. They were also on Exham IV's surface to make sure that the Veer-Myn on the surface couldn't get the upper hand. But most importantly, they were also like shutting down everything in space.
But they really were observing in a weird way. They were like the least involved.
Yeah,
That's
in a way, the
impression
least
I get.
involved. Yes.
Yeah.
And they were trying to stay out of sight while still hitting like surgical strikes. They didn't deploy in all a big army, because the Clade wasn't that big too. But the surgical strikes accompanied by the Shuvatar, Nemrath, who knew exactly how to direct the troops, was then used on the surface to like hit critical infrastructure the Veer-Myn were using. And sometimes also clashing with the other factions, of course. Because everyone is going to be doing their own thing. So
it's called Warpath Universe for a reason. They all just like, fight each other at the end of the day.
And I think now we're getting to the last bit, to the Forge Fathers. And I wanted to talk about them as the last faction, because it's also one of the more important ones, which I think it wasn't clear until now that the Forge Fathers would be really important to this story. But the Forge Fathers were looking, or were like having their eyes on Exham long before the GCPS got there. So when Migan began exploiting the mineral wealth, the Forge Fathers felt insulted. So they had marked the planet for full and complete coring long before the GCPS got there, but the GCPS didn't care. And the GCPS and Migan didn't knew that, to be fair. And the second insult was not only that the Migan started like the mineral exploitation, but the humans were just so completely bad at it in the eyes of the Forge Fathers that it was an offense that they called that exploitation. So the Forge Fathers knew they could get so much more minerals out of there that the Migan miners didn't even see and knew how to extract out of the planet, that not only did they take the planet the Forge Fathers wanted for themselves, but also they did a bad job at it. So, double insult.
Okay. Yeah.
But we also know, and this is really, really interesting, how the Forge Fathers operate, because they knew the mineral wealth of the planet, but they didn't act at first, because they are an old species, they have time, so they set up their plans accordingly. We know the GCPS, they find something and everything is chaotic and they must act swiftly and so on and so forth. But the Forge Fathers, they make plans, they have time, they live hundreds of years. The humans don't. So for them, it's just the haste is a weakness. So the Star Realm then just watched as Migan missed the choice of themes and they moved operations too early and so on, and thought, okay, we just wait until Migan leaves and then we go in there and reap the rest and exploit the planet the proper way, the Forge Father way. So they have time. Why should they now? Because they were treated already with the GCPS and they couldn't go all out war or didn't want at that point. So they just waited, they had time, the GCPS didn't. They knew Migan would move on at some point and then they would go there. So they persuaded the humans to leave on their own accord and just wanted to take over afterwards. Because, I mean, Forge Fathers, the Forge Stars are like the biggest achievement of Forge Father society. They can rob a sun of its energy. Yeah? And then use it as some kind of super weapon. And they...
Like a Dyson sphere?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So it's really interesting. And they use the power of these Forge Stars, and they found a rogue planet in the vicinity, and they used and altered the trajectory of this rogue planet, which then moved Exham out of the sun's trajectory.
Okay.
So they would just shoot this rogue planet to Exham, nudge Exham out of its orbit, of its sun's orbit, just a little bit, and it wasn't a big deal for the Forge Fathers, but that was what then triggered the catastrophe with the Ice Age, and in the end with the Veer-Myn uprising, because they had to leave the planet. But the Forge Fathers
so they caused everything, basically.
Yes, and that's really the interesting part, because it looked natural, and it was like the scheme of the Forge Fathers to say, okay, now we want to get rid of the corporation, make the planet uninhabitable, and then we can go in there and mine the rest. But they didn't think, or they didn't know about the immense nest of Veer-Myn that was just in these tunnels. So they thought, okay, Migan would leave, maybe in 20 years, maybe in 60 years, but at some point they will leave, because it's just not worth it for them. And then the Forge Fathers lay in wait until then, and they could go in and then mine the planet. So this is, for me, one of the most interesting bits about this planet, that the Forge Fathers were like in the shadows. While every faction had their own agenda, the Forge Fathers were just waiting far longer than the GCPS had to do something with this planet. And they had these plans, and they just even without the GCPS knowing, they would alter everything. And when Exham sank into chaos, the Forge Fathers watched. The civilians were just going crazy, the Marines were shooting civilians, desperation everywhere, and it was that, okay, maybe we can take the planet sooner than expected. Not bad for us. I mean, they kill themselves, easy. We don't have to wait 60 years. That's nice. Then the Veer-Myn outbreak happened, and that wasn't good. The Forge Fathers know the Veer-Myn. they don't like the Veer-Myn because it's like a bit of antithetic for them, because they don't do good craftsmanship. They are like nesting in other ships and not doing their own things. And they know that it's hard to deal with Veer-Myn infectations because you have to really eradicate them all, or else something will always be left in some tunnel or some hatch or so on. And the dwarves' prejudice towards humans, that they are inept at anything, were just like once again made clear to them, because how could the humans let the Veer-Myn grow in such a manner? So once again, humans are bad, we are better than everyone else. And even the containment protocols seemed like a joke to them. They knew how the council would go on, and they knew, okay, if this containment protocol and everything would go on as it's going on now, it would be catastrophic for the Forge Fathers, because they would never be able to reach Exham and the minerals, because the GCPS and the council would then monitor the planet and so on and so forth, and that's not good. So they had to act, and they covertly landed on Exham. They wanted to get to the surface. They wanted to get it done right, so that the council would lose interest in the end in Exham, and they could go in and mine. And for that to happen, they had to be the ones doing the job. So they prepped the asteroids in the orbit with mines, so that the humans couldn't report as fastly to the council, so that the Forge Fathers had more time to do their thing on the planet before containment protocol hit. So
they're trying to delay it.
Yes. So you remember the first Enforcer strike team going for the planet, getting like devastating failure in the engines, and most of the Enforcer strike team dying. That was because of the Forge Father mines in the asteroids.
Ah, okay. So the ship got basically destroyed. But didn't they cause the containment protocol?
I mean,
well, it caused the containment protocol to go harder, basically.
Yes. So, I mean, it would have been either way a containment protocol once they hit the ground, and would have been able to see the Veer-Myn outbreak as big as it was. So for the Forge Fathers, it was okay, good. We have to stop it. In the end, it wasn't that effective as they hoped for. So kudos to the Enforcers working faster than the Forge Fathers thought they would. Maybe it's just a bit because we've heard that the Forge Fathers don't have don't think very very well of the humans. So maybe they underestimated the human protocols at that point.
Yeah.
So yes, because of the destruction, the containment protocols were still set in motion, but the Forge Fathers had a plan for everything. So here, all catastrophes that happened were Forge Father made. They aren't really the good guys in this story.
Let's be honest. I don't think there are any good guys here. The only good guys in this entire story are the ones that tried to get off the planet and couldn't. The workers. The workers.
Yes.
Shafted. Yeah.
Everyone else is really the bad guy here. So the plan was before they wanted to destroy the whole Enforcer ship. But because the Enforcer pilot was good enough and the Enforcers are just really tough as nails, they survived. Else it would have been a bit harder for them to really send the signal to get the containment protocol going. The Forge Father plan was to get on boots on the ground, eradicate the Veer-Myn, or at least the Broodmother and her retinue, and then before more Enforcers would arrive, they could extract. The Enforcers would see, okay, the situation is under control, and Exham would be left alone as a dead planet, and they could go in there. And because of this tactic, one of the leaders, or the one leading the first assault, was Bjarn Starnafall, and he is the one who also was involved in making the hammer suit drop suit armor. So the ones where you can drop from orbit, or like orbital drop from space onto the planet. And he led, with a few other Hammer Fist drop troopers, the first assault there, and then reinforced with others. And so that was the idea, to get there unannounced, make an overwhelming strike in the heart of the Veer-Myn force, kill the brother, kill the ones on top of the hierarchy, and the rest could then be handled by the GCPS or the humans in general with the enforcers.
Okay. Interesting.
So it didn't go as planned.
A lot of pieces. There's a lot of pieces in the story. It's very fascinating.
It's an immense story, yeah. Because in the end, the Forgefather plan was good. Was a good one. I mean, if it wouldn't have been for the Veer-Myn, and then even if they would have gotten to the Veer-Myn Broodmother without the enforcers going in, so if every enforcer would have been killed, maybe the Veer-Myn could have been contained easier, because the Forgefathers could have been doing more work. But because of that, the more enforcers came, and the Forgefathers had to retreat a bit again, and then the 10 other factions involved had also their plans. So it's a really chaotic story, but with so many interactions between the factions, and that's what I really, really like here.
Yeah, I think this is a really good taste of everything. And that's my opinion on it. It just kind of like dives into like every single faction. Probably the only one that we don't have here is the Plague, really. I think that's the last one that hasn't really got anything. But I mean, let's be honest, they were everywhere anyway. So
yeah, and I mean that's why I wanted to start with a tidbit from the Infestation book. With you could imagine having a little plague outbreak on the surface too. Maybe because a Mason Labs facility was there, or a plague artifact, or whatever. Because it's so chaotic, so much things are happening. If you decide to play on Exham IV at that time and play with Plague, I mean, why not?
Yeah, it's fast. Yeah, God, there's so many pieces here. It's quite funny that the Forge Fathers are the ones that caused the whole thing, and they weren't actually well known in the story until later on.
Yeah, no one would have suspected that they play a major role in everything, because if they wouldn't have changed the trajectory of of Exham IV, the Veer-Myn wouldn't have sprung, or get out of their hiding. So, I mean, at some point the Veer-Myn would have done something, but in the end, they were the ones really leading to all of this. There is still one last outro bit that I want to cover really quickly in the end, because the story doesn't really end with this. The enforcers in the end were successful. They saved Priory Station, eradicated the vermin they could find on every vermin they could find on Exham IV. They didn't completely wipe out the colony though. Marauders and Raps were able to retreat, as we already said. The Assyrians too. They were happy with how it went, that the enforcers were able to. The enforcers didn't know how many others helped in in culling the Veer-Myn too. So, I mean, Marauders and Raps were killing Veer-Myn left and right. Assyrians and Forgefathers also. So the biggest threat were the Veer-Myn in this case. But in the end, the enforcers were the ones who were able to do the job. But they thought everyone would be completely wiped out, every Veer-Myn from this colony on Exham or Priory. But a few were able to make it out alive. And now once again...
you only need a few.
Yes. And they were on Forgefather vessels. Because the Forgefathers were staying on the planet and tried to stay off the grid, so that the GCPS didn't know of their involvement. And the enforcers at some point were pulled out, everything was okay, Some nameless fleets were in the vicinity outside the Pedestrian system, so the enforcers had to go there to investigate what was going on with the increased hostile nameless activity. And Migan had to do something about Priory Station. Exham IV was lost. It's not really in the orbit is changed, and they moved Priory Station to Exham III to get the hub going there in a stable environment. And so they wanted this waypoint and this vast source of income still going on, of course, and it was really, really, really important for them. This was fine by the Forge Fathers. They watched what was going on. They thought, okay, Exham IV is out of the equation now because Priory Station is on Exham III now. Now they have time. And they had an under-table deal between the council and the Forge Fathers. And so they made a deal that, okay, you don't need the planet anymore. Can we go on Exham IV? You've gone. Migan is gone. So, yeah, we just take care that the Veer-Myn here are really eradicated, and that's it, okay? We get the mining rights because, there isn't anything left here. The council agreed, and they finally had access to these minerals. And an interesting point is that there were rich seams of osmium. And this is one of the most valuable materials, because in Forge Father society and in the mythological understanding, they own the galaxy, they own the universe. And when two dragons fought, so in the mythological tradition of the Forge Fathers, Farangir and Murakin were two dragons living in the universe, and they fought, and they were brothers, and Farangir was fooled by his brother. They wanted to make the perfect star iron and a primordial metal. And Farangir was betrayed, and Farangir was then scattered deep into space, and Murakin vanished. And the fragments from this ingot and that was to be created there is the primordial metal, and Exham IV had some of this metal. So that was really, really something the Forge Fathers wanted. So until now, Forge Fathers are happy. They have big cargo ships, mining haulers, bringing these metals, these minerals to their Forge Star, which they used for the catastrophe. And, happy end for them. But big
kind of
mining haulers and cargo ships have plenty of place to hide. And that's the big problem. Some Veer-Myn were able to hide themselves between the bundles of cargo, and there were some technorati, so the techno rats, so the engineer rats, and they used their advanced technological skill to defeat the security grids that the Forge Fathers usually use against Veer-Myn. So Forge Fathers know that. They have a grid, an alarm system, and the Veer-Myn were able to disable it and then hide. The Forge Fathers thought themselves secure, and those Veer-Myn then launched an assault on a Forge Star in the end. So they were clandestines on the Forge Star through the cargo haulers, and then tried to take control of the Forge Star. And now we are in the year 997. And this is when this outbreak happens now in Forge Father space on the Forge Star, and a battle over the control of the Forge Star is underway. It's still not completely sure. So it's still the fighting is still going on. So the Forge Fathers haven't won or lost yet, but it would be a massive loss for them to use a Forge Star to the Veer-Myn. So in the end, they got what they deserved.
Yeah.
So in their arrogance, not only regarding the humans, but also regarding the Veer-Myn, they had given them the opportunity to get to get Veer-Myn on their own forged star, and it's not known to the outsiders, so they are keeping the secret. But it's in the end the Veer-Myn would be able to take over a forged star, that would be a massive shift in power at that point.
So what's the current status of the planet? And like,
so Exham is still being mined. Exham IV is still being mined.
But is it still erased from all maps and stuff?
No, that has been lifted because the containment protocol was okay. I think it was then just like thought to be I don't know, a computer failure or something like that. Some propaganda would be in place there in the GCPS to tell a story what happened, because Priory then was moved to Exham IV. Maybe they said like the problem with going out of the orbit of the sun was causing this. Not really sure, but there are many possibilities to hide the true nature of the accident. And I think it was also possible because many factions in the end had the same enemy. I mean, everyone had their own interests, but like no one was on the side of the Veer-Myn. Everyone was against the Veer-Myn with their own interests. So in GCPS history, it's okay. Migan still has control over Priory Station. The Council of Seven have also a bit more of control about that, because they know how vital this station is. So once again, we have a crisis in the GCPS, and the Council is able to consolidate even more power. The biggest losers in the whole equation are the Forge Fathers, because not only are they fighting for the fate of this one Forge Star, but also going out from there, a few juvenile Broodmothers were sent in other cargo ships that were traveling through Forge Father space, and are now having their own nests deep in Forge Father space. So before the Forge Fathers had it under control, more or less under control, and now there are more and more Veer-Myn nests sprawling or coming out of cargo haulers, Forge Stars, or other Forge Father territory. So they really have a problem.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, they started this whole thing by sabotaging the humans. So, again...
I mean, the arrogance of... So, it was their downfall was their own arrogance in the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Downfall is a bit harsh, but yeah. So,
I mean,
but
it's not really downfall. It's just the fact that they kind of screwed themselves, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and now on the border between GCPS and Forge Father space, most of the Veer-Myn colonies can be found there.
Interesting. So Veer-Myn is still, like, do Veer-Myn kind of unite, like different colonies unite to each other, or do they kind of work independently from each other?
A good question. Usually every nest is for themselves, because they have also infighting, and if they have more Broodmothers or like juveniles who then become Broodmothers, usually the nests split. And so, like for which is a good thing for the other factions, because they don't unite, but if they get really big, they usually split up again. There are a few instances where they are able to work together on a bigger scale also. Then there is a team of Volt Chasers, so even more techno engineering on the Veer-Myn, who were found on Magnetar. Maybe we will do an episode on that planet too at some point, where two sisters were working together, or are working together, where one is the leading and the other is still accepted and still supporting. Which, if that trend would continue, wouldn't be good for the whole universe, I'd say.
No, I mean, a unified force of Veer-Myn probably be pretty bad. But I do like the idea. I guess I mean we do have to just get more information on vermin colonies, of how they actually work, of what's the internal social aspect of vermin colonies. I think I really only know, these outbreaks, we only know glimpses of the damage they've done rather than how they internally work. Yeah, we know how structures of colonies work, but we don't really know whether they call themselves a particular name, or a good example is like goblin and orc tribes. They call themselves something like Bloodfang or something like that. It'd be interesting to see whether vermin have a similar kind of coding that
they have
themselves.
names. They have names. They call themselves names, and there are even a few characters who are outside of the normal Veer-Myn.
So do they have clan names and stuff?
I don't think they are really known clan names. Not that I know. But apart maybe from the Volt Chasers, who are a sub-faction because they are like more bionic implants and armored and so on. But there are a few examples of Veer-Myn who are maybe outcasts or just working with some nests where they go and not living with them. One would be the Piper, who was also active in Exham IV, who is a bit of an outcast because he's surrounding himself with like actual rats and other like little rat creatures, and not with the humanoid intelligent Veer-Myn. So, but he also helped the Brood and the Nest. Or there is Hacker Halftail, who sometimes even works for Blaine, so is a mercenary in GCPS space. So
they can work independently, yeah.
Yes. So, and we also have Veer-Myn Dreadball teams. I mean, there are rumors that these were genetically like built rats, because some don't even think that Veer-Myn exist. So, as always with Dreadball, are they really Veer-Myn? Are they like born in some laboratory and used for these things?
Experiments, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, but you could, Veer-Myn. I really wish, I really want a book on Veer-Myn, just Veer-Myn. I think that would be a fascinating book.
I mean, this is the perfect place to also pitch the upcoming new First Strike Alpha Strike edition, because we get a lot of insight how a nest works there.
Yeah.
So
I haven't actually read through it yet, but yeah.
Without going to, I don't want to go into detail too much, but if you're interested in how the society works, how progenitors, Broodmother interacts, and so on, read that book. Read it anyway, but especially if you're interested in that.
I mean, it's the most recent release for Warpath, and obviously, just like any business, the more you buy, the more likely they'll produce more products like it. So
yeah, I've already pre-ordered mine.
Yeah, I want it, because I'm a physical person when it comes to books. I can't really digitally read novels because for some reason I just get bored. Even though I look at the internet all the time and I read articles and so forth, for some reason when it comes to novels, I just can't do it. I need something physically in my hand for it. So I'm hoping to get a physical copy of that when it comes out and really dive into it, because I think there's there's so much potential for more of these stories to be told, and I really hope someone does what they're doing with the Panathor books, where they actually, because at the moment there's a book coming out called The Fall of the Celestians, and that actually covers the smashing of the mirror that causes the Wicked Ones and the Shining Ones, and that's a huge significant event in the history of Panathor. And I hope they do something similar with Warpath, is that they took maybe the Mandrake Rebellion or something like that. Yeah. And just elaborate and just write it down in a book, so it's a bit digestible, because there's so many different elements to what happened during that conflict. You can't really cover everything, and I really, really hope they go down that route with Warpath. I think there's so many stories that deserve a really good deep dive into.
Absolutely.
Well,
interesting tidbit to this Exham thing. The newest, so most of the lore is from the 2016 Infestation book, the Dead Zone supplement, which introduced the Veer-Myn. But then with Firefight, there was a starter set called Fate of a Forge Star. So the starter set from Firefight with Veer-Myn against Forge Fathers is set in this conflict that was caused by the Exham IV accident. So if you want to replay that, or it was also in the fluff then in the Dead Zone or Firefight books in the newer ones, and tied into these starter boxes. And that's something that Mantic have done quite often, that the starter boxes, especially in the last years, that the starter boxes for things like Firefight are tied into the backstory. And I think it's great. And I was really intrigued to see that at that point, because I knew the old XM4 story, and then when the Firefight starter dropped, and I read the lore in the Firefight book, I went, wow, the story is going on, and it's a massive change with the fighting over a Forge Star, and Forge Fathers thinking about destroying their Forge Star so that the Veer-Myn don't get it, but are too stubborn to do it, and the Veer-Myn are just reproducing at an incredible rate because they are Veer-Myn. That's so cool. And you have immediately a great story there. So if you get the starter, you can now listen to this 2-hour-long episode and know all about the setting in which you're fighting.
Yeah, and we'll post a link to it as well. It's called Firefight Assault on Exham. It actually was the box set I was thinking about getting before I realized I've got no money. But that was the intended to get that one. I mean, I talk about Mantic stuff so much that I can't buy everything. So I've got Halo, I've got Panathor stuff, and I got Firefight. And Firefight is one that I've always wanted to dive into eventually in terms of actually the models themselves. So now I want to get the Exham one more than before, because now there's some context behind it. So I hope maybe some people out there that have listened to this is also a bit drawn towards it, because I think the more people that get it, the more of the story we'll get. I really want to get it now, because I like Forge Fathers. I think Forge Fathers are one of my favorite factions that are.
And I think you're not the only one who really likes Forge Fathers, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know in terms of rule set. I don't know where they stand on that, but just from the aesthetics, I'm more about aesthetic rather than gameplay, and because I just want to have an awesome army and I think that was really fascinating. Thanks for that, Claudio. That was very intriguing.
It was really long, and I had many things to tell, so I'm sorry if it was a bit of a monologue, but it's just so much going on there in this story. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, we needed more sound effects, I reckon. just to wake people up during those times, because it was
Veer-Myn
so
bursting out of the ground.
Yeah, exactly. and just to remind everyone which factions are doing what, because there was so much going on. But to be honest, it made sense to me. So I'm hoping it wasn't too much for people out there. It was great.
If you have any questions, if something wasn't as clear as it should have been, or maybe some details, I had to leave out many details, of course, because it's long enough already. Just post some questions in the Discord or in the Facebook page, or YouTube comments, Spotify, whatever. Just get in touch with us. It's always nice, because we have also a few questions, I think, from the last ones, which we will cover now. Just get in touch, because we love to talk about it. So.
Yeah, I mean, we have a Discord there for a reason, and the more comments and people engage with, the more we'll understand what we want what we should be covering as well. I mean, we could talk about every single planet in the entire history of Warpath. It doesn't mean it's actually going to be interesting. So if anyone has any ideas, throw it out there, because we'll cover it, even if it's just only you would care about. We will do that anyway. But on that,
and also feedback about the format, because we're right now, I think personally, I'm rather happy with this planet lore thing, because we're getting to know these factions more and more, and we're able to see motivations, how they work. I mean, we can go into more detail to the culture later anyway, but I think it's a good way to have a broader look while still having a singular event around the planet. So just give a feedback if you feel the same or not. So
yeah, I mean, we've also got so many different things in Warpath to cover. I mean, we've got Epic Warpath coming up as well. That's going to be interesting to dive into that lore. We've also got all the Dreadball lore. That's all out there as well. So there's so much more we can cover than just planets. So it's just a case of just ask us and we'll do it. I guess we'll dive into, in that case of people asking us, let's go into some of the feedback. So how about you do make Codus as feedback, and I'll do Screaming Dabs.
Okay.
Hey there, I'm Brian.
And I'm Rick.
From Dead Zone, the podcast.
And you're listening to Mantic Universe Podcast.
For everything Mantic under the sun.
Yes. So we have from Kodos, so from our own team, Epic Warpath team, too. Here's a question. Why are Forge Fathers the best faction, and what is the core difference to the usual fantasy dwarfs? So we covered Forge Fathers quite a bit in the last half hour. The best faction, I think, the aesthetic is great. They feel like dwarves. You see them and you know exactly they are space dwarves. I love that about them. And I think they are, I mean, best faction. I mean, we all know the Reps are the best faction, but Forge Fathers look great. I think they play great. They feel like an elite army. They feel sturdy. They feel headstrong. They feel technically advanced. And they, I think, in the Exham IV example, it's perfect to see how they think, because they plan ahead, and they have this mindset that in the end, the GCPS will perish maybe at some point. Until then, they can have their treaties. They can make profit out of it. They can profit from the GCPS expanding with working with them. Others hate the GCPS, like Ingo's Crestoson, so it's always good to have different sub-factions or interests. But in the end, they think the galaxy should be theirs. They have an interesting mythological background to back that up, and they're just playing the waiting game. And I think that's something really, really unique. And especially compared to the GCPS, both are greedy, extremely greedy, both exploit planets, but they are so different in their core values still. That makes it really interesting.
Yeah, I do definitely agree. And I think the more that I think there is a lack of information on certain factions as well. And I think Forge Fathers is one of those, Forge Fathers are one of those factions that do have a really good kind of general explanation of their faction, but I don't think we've really gone to how their culture actually operates. Yeah, we do have kind of an understanding of how the clans and kind of things operate, but in terms of a day-to-day kind of, because we know the day-to-day of a GCPS person, of all the corporation stuff and all that, and what they get entertained by Dreadball, and that they're all about products and all that kind of stuff. But really, what on a Forge Father planet, what is that like? I mean, what's a day-to-day kind of normal, how does a kid grow up kind of deal? And I think we need a little bit more of that in the lore, and it's a book will obviously cover a lot of that. And I think that's what I'm personally looking for, and hopefully they can dive a little bit into it, because we've always got glimpses of it. I don't think we've really got a really good story on it yet.
Yeah. I mean, the second part was, what is the difference to the usual fantasy dwarfs? I think there isn't that much. Which is also a strength in my opinion, because you know the tropes and it really works well. The difference maybe is that they claim everything, and I don't think that's something that the fantasy dwarfs usually do, that they say it's everything belongs to us. But in the legend and myth are such a strong part of Forge Father culture, and they think that they inherit the galaxy because of the first
entitled
dragon.
to it.
Yeah, and I think that makes it really interesting, because that is also a reasoning that they go go to war against other factions, not only because of like greed and mineral interests, but there is the understanding that at some point they have to rule over the whole galaxy, because the first king dragon, Frakia, which was like before the Big Bang, if you want, in a way, or that caused the Big Bang. That's like a thing of an ancestral figure for them. So that is something which is really, really cool in understanding the long-term game they are playing.
But I mean, if you think of Forge Father, when you're asking the question, it's a question of whether you're asking about the faction, the Forge Fathers, or dwarfs, because there are hints at dark dwarfs out there. The Murker. I don't know how to spell it. Say it. Murakkir. That's basically they're an offshoot of the Forge Father dwarfs, and it sounds like they're like the space version of Abyssal Dwarves if you follow Kings of War. So I've got a feeling they're going to have a part to play in the future as well, which I think will be a little bit unique.
If they are really evil or they live outside the Forge Father society, they are still dwarves. They are like in another part, the Dark Star. So it's a hint that they maybe are like the Abyssal Dwarves, maybe a bit more evil, but good and evil, what is good and evil? We already talked about the Forge Fathers quite a bit today, and they didn't really seem to be the good guys. So it's really interesting to see. And there are many other parts to Forge Father society, also the Brocker, who are like a bit of an engineer or a working class, who are a bit outside of the normal society. So we have so many different big clans. We don't have like one king, but many Forge Lords. So they aren't as unified as you might think they are. There are infights, struggles. I think they are great. They are a really a core faction of this universe. They have quite a bit of background, mythological background, more than maybe any other faction, but because it's so essential to them. And as someone who loves history, having a faction with such an historic heritage and mythological heritage is just great.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's why I like. To be honest, I would buy a Forge Father book in a heartbeat if one was out there. And so I'm hoping that to be explored a bit more. We'll head on to another question from Screaming Dabs. They've said, "I'd love to hear thoughts on the Marauders and how to continue to make them distinct from the typical orc. I love the fact they're basically an ultra-violent." I love the fact they are basically ultra-violent geniuses. In the future, I'd like to hear more background on the culture, both pre and post the Mandrake Rebellion. I don't think it exists. Now, again, this is one of those ones where, are you talking about the faction or are you talking about the actual race of orcs? Because the Marauders are actually a combination of races from the planet of Gora. So that we've got Hulks, we've got Goblins, we've got Orcs, and we've got more beasts as well. And I think I'm missing another one. I think Hobgoblins.
Yes.
Yeah, the last one's there. So the Marauders are actually a combination of all five of them. But if you just look at the typical orc, I would say these are like the smarter, definitely the more I don't know if you call them more cultured, but just the smarter orcs, which I think is something that Mantic should do more of, especially if you look on the Panathor side of it. I think too many tropes with the orcs that just make them dumb or make them savage or just not put a lot of intelligence behind them. I think with the Warpath ones, they've definitely got more of a brains to them. They still feel like they're still running into that trope of just being a little bit kind of ruthless and savage. So I would like to see more of a society being built, especially how there are hints that they want to be a more kind of more of a kind of collective unit instead of just mercenaries just flying around the universe.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we had a short bit about Marauders today where just that happened with Chief Maluka. They are savage, they are brutal, they like violence, and it's also in their culture a bit of the survival of the fittest ideology in there. But also we've seen the plans that Maluka made would have been brilliant, and they would have worked. And it's on a really large scale there, because we know how interesting Priory Station is now. So this is just an example, and maybe I think the next episode could be one focusing a bit more on the Marauders, because they weren't that much in the spotlight yet. So we could do a next one about the planet Carbot 3, which is like heavily about Marauders, also Enforcers, and there we could also go into detail, because it's essential for the happenings around Carbot 3, what happened with the Mandrake Rebellion, what was going on there, how the culture works, and we have a few tidbits when facing the Enforcers that tell us how the Orcs in general, but also the Marauders, work. And I think that would be a good episode to really talk about this one, because I also feel that this intelligent but still savage trope is a really good one. And I love from the first... Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say that the other starter set is actually the Battle of Colbert 3 as well. So
exactly.
It's a good way of good segue to move on to the next one.
Exactly. That's what was I thinking about earlier when talking about the other set. So okay, that's funny. That is another firefight starter, 2-player starter set.
Yeah.
And on that note, also the first short story compilation, the Containment Protocols, has a great story about the Marauders as mercenaries, where the humans just think they are just dumb brutes, and the Marauders like to keep it that way, so that the humans underestimate the intelligence and the cunning of the Marauders, or the Orcs. So that's really, really funny, and again shows not only that they are intelligent, but they know how to use it, and makes them even more intelligent.
Yeah, we should go for the pick a story one day and just do an episode on one of the short stories. I think that would be really cool. Because there's not a lot of stories out there, but they're definitely out there, so it might be worth picking a short story and actually doing it. So if anyone out there has got an idea for a short story you want us to kind of review and make it maybe a little book club that we read a piece of lore and break it down a bit more, just let us know, because Rob Berman has offered to come on to the shows and actually talk about some of the stories he's written as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Also, that would be the perfect way to get a bit more Night Stalker and Matsudan lore in there with Rob Berman, who wrote much of the background. So, we'll see what the future brings. So, we have so many stories to tell in the Warpath universe. So much universe, so little time, right?
Yeah, literally.
And we haven't really talked about the Nameless, Night Stalker, Matsudan, Mason Labs. They were hinted here and there. Sometimes some factions, some didn't. But we will cover that all in due time, I'd say.
And the only thing we can guarantee you is that we will bring up Planet Licensing again sometime in the future.
It's just inevitable. It's inevitable. And I think it's crucial to understand how the GCPS work again.
It's just a weird joke that we've landed on, but we can't get away from it.
Yes.
So I don't know.
And it wasn't planned at all. But when I was preparing for Exham, I was, okay, do I include it? Oh, it's so important, because it's like one of the biggest corporations getting it and seeing how they really open warfare is an option. And yeah, well, we're stuck with it now, so.
All right, we're gonna keep doing it, and eventually we're gonna run out of ways to wedge that in, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, I think we wrapped it up nicely. Is there anything else you wanted to cover there, Claudio?
I think the last point is with the Adriana accident from last episode. That one happened many years after the House Grace incident. So I think when listening to it back again, there could have been the impression that shortly after the House Grace incident with the ships, Adriana happened, but there is quite a bit of time. It's not really sure when Adriana happened. There isn't really a date in the source book or anywhere else, but just to like have that bit out there, so it's not clearly related. So there was time for the GCPS to prepare between plague fleets and the first artifact that was uncovered. So the plague was known already to them.
Oh, yeah. Like Mantic don't really like putting dates on things, which really frustrates someone like a canon person like me. Because I always like to have a timeline in my head when things take place, but they just don't like putting dates on it. It's very frustrating. It's all of a guessing game at the end of the day.
Well, with the universe expanding and the timeline going forward, I think it will be added over time more and more, because it just makes sense to keep it a bit vague in the beginning, to then be able to maybe add something new and have a bit of a possibility to change things without retconning, maybe. So
yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Epic Warpath, but Epic Warpath maybe we will get a new timeline, because we know every iteration of a rulebook until now has had the story going forward and the universe moving on. As I already said, Exham IV is a very, very good example how the universe evolved over the last 9 years of our 9 years, but also in the universe. So yeah,
and I think we're getting Epic Warpath around about June or July, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there are rumors that around that time not only Epic Warpath will be something, some news for the Warpath universe. So
yeah, we'll try and get our hands on that lore and just have a really big episode of us just breaking down what was actually in that book. Similar like we've done with Champions. So we'll do a similar one that we would do with the Epic Warpath if we can get our hands on a copy. I don't, it doesn't look like they immediately give a PDF out, and they only do the physical copy to initially to begin with, but we'll see what we can do, because it'll be really good just to go through that entire book and just point out things that are new, especially the Nameless. I think that everyone's looking forward to seeing a little bit the Nameless a little bit fleshed out a little bit more. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, cool. And I think that's it. We've talked longer than we planned to, but it was just so many informations, and I've tried to cut it at some points, but it's just a vast story.
You did really, really well, and a lot of people won't realize this because we would have cut it out. At the start of the episode, there's a little bit of a jump that you guys might not realize, but I spilled a lot of grey paint all over myself, and it went everywhere. There's stains on the ground. My landlord's going to freak out. My shirt's completely ruined, and I ruined my jeans as well. So I sacrificed a lot for this episode. So that's all I'm saying to that. My girlfriend was not happy at all, because she was talking for a mate that was in England as well that she hadn't talked to for a while. So I'm gonna have to experience that wrath. But yeah, thanks all for listening. I really do appreciate it. Thanks, Claudio, for preparing all that for us, and it was really, really good.
No worries.
As we've said before, make sure you join our Discord. We can have discussions about the next episode, or just discussions about the Warpath universe in general. Make sure you pick up First Strike Alpha Edition coming out. Pre-order it. Yeah, Alpha Strike Edition. That's it. Make sure you pick it up. It's got new stuff in there that wasn't in the original book. And the more people support the lore, the more likely they'll come up with more. It sounds like they are cooking some stuff up, but that timeline seems to move up if they've got a reason to move it up. So make sure you all reach out and just support the universe, and just let us know. Also like us on or join the Facebook page. We've got a Patreon. Chuck us a buck if you want to. You get credited at the end of YouTube videos if you do. Send an email to kingsofwarwiki@gmail.com if you've got a message for us, because that's the email address we use just for all the lore stuff. I think I covered
usually we can be found like anywhere that talks about the Warpath universe, being it also the Mantic Discord, the Facebook groups. So plenty of places to reach out to us.
Exactly. So thanks you all for listening. We're going to wrap this up, and we'll see you next time, because we want to keep on doing this even if no one's listening.
Bye-bye.